So today we're covering tube feeding. So if you're new here, remember to like, share, and subscribe for more puppy content. But right now I am prepping my tube feeding supplies. So these are what you're gonna need. You're gonna need a tube. This right here, this is a 5 French tube, and this is gonna be used for my Frenchie puppies. They do make a smaller size, so like a 3.5 French, and French is the actual size. So make sure when you're searching for it, it's 3.5 FR. But this right here is a 5. This is gonna consider like their medium. And then there's also an 8 French, which is for bigger puppies, 10 French, 14 French. But this is the one I use, either 3.5 or a 5 French for the bigger puppies. Now you'll notice that on this tube, there's gonna be little holes at the end of it, right here. So there's one little hole right there, there's another hole right there, and it's rounded. So I've had a question where somebody asked me, hey, it seems like it's too long. Can I just cut the tube? The answer is no. You don't want to cut the tube because these holes do allow for adequate milk flow, and so that way it doesn't just rush out and rush into the puppy's stomach. And then also it's rounded on the tip, so that way it's soft going into the puppy's throat, so that way it doesn't scratch the puppy's throat. But this bigger spot on the end, this one goes in the tube, and this one goes down the puppy's throat. So what I'm gonna do is I already have my formula that I made, and I have my feeding syringe. Now this is a 20 milliliter syringe. You can get them on Amazon, the whole syringe, the tubes, you can get them for like 20 bucks. So there's a couple different ones in there, so just find the one that you like. But you're just gonna get your formula, and I'm just gonna suck it up, and you see how there's this little air pocket right here in the tube? What you want to do is you just want to push this little air pocket out, so that way it stops at the top. This is where you're going to attach the top of your tube, and then you're just going to slowly push on the plunger, so then that way you get some of the milk to come out. Now you want to do this because you don't want to fill the puppy's stomachs with air, and you want to make sure you get as much air out as possible, but keeping 1 cc of air inside your syringe, so that way when you do tube feed them, it's easier to, tube feed them, and it's easy for the milk to go in the stomachs. But basically what you want to do is you want to feed the puppies 1 cc of formula, so that's 1 milliliter of formula for every ounce that they weigh. And you want to follow that guideline, because that way you know that if you're feeding your puppy too much or too little, or also if your puppy is not gaining weight, that may be the reason why, is because they're not eating as much. So 1 cc per ounce is the key. And then also I do have a stomach capacity chart that I like to go by. I have it right here, so if you guys are interested in having a copy of this, just let me know and I'll put in the link below. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to prep my tube. I already have the formula in here. I like to take my colostrum supplement and lube up the tip of the tube. Now I just barely stuck it in there, and then this is an extra one that I had, so I'm not going to reuse this for a different litter. This is going to stay with one litter because I'm using it for that litter's tube. So I'm going to take my puppy, simply going to take him out of the incubator. And as you can tell, he's a squirmy, hungry little girl, and she was just born today, so for the purpose of this video, I'm doing the tube feeding, but normally she'd feed on her mom. But the purpose of tube feeding is if your puppy has cleft palates or cleft lips, that's the whole reason why you'd want to tube feed. Also, if she becomes ill and she can't nurse, or she's too weak to nurse, it would be great to tube feed her, so that way she doesn't have to expend any extra energy trying to nurse on the teat, and so that way I know that her she's able to get enough food as she's not feeling good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the puppy, and I take the tip of this tube. I go to the last rib. As I go to the last rib, I measure from the last rib to the very tip of her nose. So I'm going to place her like this, and the very tip of her nose is about right there. So this is where her tip is of her chin, and I'm going to take a Sharpie, and you're gonna mark that place. So you can mark it with a Sharpie, you can put a piece of tape on there. Personally, I've done the Sharpie for years because the tape tends to slide whenever it does get wet. So you always want to make sure you have this marked. Now, keep in mind, this section is not going to go inside their mouth. It's going to stay on the outside. This just acts as a little marker or a flag to know that you're in the right spot. Because if you were to tube feed and it stops right here, but your mark's back here and you stop short, then that means that you're not all the way in the stomach. You want to make sure you're all the way in the stomach so that way the puppies, you don't put the milk directly down their lungs. If you do that, they're going to die immediately and you're basically going to flood them out, and that's very dangerous. Do not do that. So always make sure you have your marker indicator right here on the tube. So the next thing I'm going to do is, once the puppy is comfortable, I'm going to take her, I'm going to hold her head down. The reason why I'm holding her head down is because if I held her head up, it's going to open up her airway and it's going to force her to take a breath. I don't want her to take a breath because I want the tube to go straight down into her esophagus, and I want to pass it on the left side because that way it's going to hit her, it's going to be more likely to hit her stomach versus going down into her lungs. So I'm going to keep her head down and I'm going to pass it on the left side. Very slowly, very gently. And notice how my mark that I made earlier is right here on the left side. I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to hold it with my left hand. So notice how I'm holding the tube between my index finger and my middle finger, and I'm holding the back of her head. And notice how when she was squealing, that means that the tube is in the right place. So you can pinch them on their little tails, pinch them on their feet, pinch them underneath to make sure that they make a sound. And you want to make sure that you get them to cry or make a little whine or something like that. So if you heard her whine, that means it's in the correct spot. She's not choking on this tube and it's not in the lungs. So I'm going to go ahead and administer my 1 cc per ounce. So she weighs 8 ounces. I'm going to administer 8 milliliters of the formula. So as you watch me depress this plunger right here, you're going to see I'm just going very, very slow. And the reason I'm going slow is because, again, I don't want to flood her with formula. I'm just going very slow, and I reached that mark. So after I know that I gave her the amount that she needed, I'm going to go ahead and remove the tube. So what you want to do is you're going to pinch the tube very gently, like so. Pinch it on itself, and then you're going to slowly remove it. Now when you remove it, she's going to kind of, gag a little bit. But if you look at her little belly, she's pretty full. And of course, after she's content, she's not crying, she's not spitting up, there's no formula coming out of her nose, and she's not throwing up. So what I like to do is we're just gonna burp the baby. We're gonna burp the baby, make sure she burps, and you're gonna do this with every puppy that you tube feed because this is gonna help get any extra bubbles out of the airway, and it'll just help them be more comfortable so that way they don't have any gas or anything in their stomachs. But after you burp them, you're just going to just make sure she's okay, make sure she didn't throw up or anything, and then once she's done, I'm gonna put her back in the incubator, and this is where she's gonna join her siblings, and we're gonna start on the other puppies. But pretty simple. That's how you tube feed. I mean, I know a lot of people reach out to me, they're scared to tube feed, but honestly, it's not that scary. Just make sure that you have the necessary tools and you know what you're looking for. And I hope this actually makes you feel more comfortable tube feeding because it's actually very simple. So if you learned something, make sure to share this, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.